We're surrendering outcomes in this step. And when we do that, we reduce anxiety and we actually increase our well-being. That's a huge win. This is why I'm encouraging you to ditch the all too common mindset people are running around with that, hey, you know what? Something's removed from my life. That means I must have messed up. God took this opportunity away from me. I must have messed up. Instead, adopt the mindset that if something's removed from your life, or if there's some kind of setback, God may be setting you up for your next breakthrough. Science backs up this mindset too, by the way.
This is Coming Up Clutch with JR, helping the world's best in sports, entertainment, and business make winning a lifestyle.
What's up? It's JR, and
it's time for the 5-minute drill.
I call this segment of the show the 5-minute drill because I give you a strategy that will take no longer than 5 minutes to implement. This is a proven strategy to help you come up clutch more often in at least one area of your life, leading you to more wins and positioning you to maximize your success and significance. I'm about helping you make winning a lifestyle, not a one-time thing. So I want to ask you straight up as we get going here today. Have you ever felt blindsided by a loss that made absolutely no sense? Like you thought everything was on point, then boom, the client's gone. Or you're crushing it at work, then you're let go. Or a friend you've done life with for years suddenly distances themselves to you. Feels like a punch to the gut, right? But what if that wasn't life failing you and life falling apart, but God pulling you into something better? So by the end of this episode, I want to help you understand how God sometimes has this counterintuitive strategy of subtraction that is often the start of your next season of multiplication. You also have a strategy to better navigate these seasons of your life because you and I both know these are tough seasons when these losses happen. They're not easy, even if you know it's for your good. And by the way, if you're a guy listening to this today, just a reminder that the application window for the Clutch Club is now open. This is my elite strategy and mentorship premium membership that's designed to help you unleash your best everywhere, not just in your career. I'm talking about your home, your health, your marriage, everywhere. So if you want unprecedented access to world-class mentorship and training alongside a community of former athletes who cut through the BS and now compete as leaders and executives and entrepreneurs, if you want to feel unstoppable on whatever field of play you're on, then strike while the iron's hot and head on over to theclutchclub.com. Just check it out there. A lot of amazing stuff happening inside this club. And my club guys, they're going deeper with the strategies that we're discussing on these podcast episodes. And it's helping them show up differently, especially when it matters most. So again, I encourage you, go to theclutchclub.com and check it out. You won't regret it. And before I forget, if you're empowered by the show and learning something, make sure you follow us on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss out when we drop new episodes. Just hit that purple plus on the top right-hand corner of the podcast app. When you do that, this podcast has a chance to get in the hands of more people that need it. So help someone out today. Make sure you're following the show. And speaking of helping someone out today, share today's episode. Play that hero to your family, your friends, your teammates, by giving them the link to this or sending them to comingupclutch.com. And when you post about this episode on social, make sure to tag me. All right, 5-minute drill. Let's get it. So this drill, it was born out of a gut punch that I got back in 2016. I was doing great work for a contractor, steady project, great income, and out of nowhere, one of its principals just rips up the contract. No warning, nothing. And I only knew something was up because I was getting calls from clients saying that their emails to me were bouncing. And I'll be honest with you, I went into panic mode. 2 kids, living in Chicago at the time. A lot at stake here. But here's what that moment revealed. And really kind of hit me in the face pretty hard. I was putting my faith in other people. was putting my faith in money, not in God. But years later, I realized that loss of that contract, it was the beginning of a new season that deepened my trust in God and really elevated my trajectory, both personally and professionally. Now, rewind even further. Now I'm going back. 2005. I was just getting serious about my walk with Christ. I had recently moved from Chicago to Phoenix, was done with college, done playing. And I got connected with some powerful men of God who so happened to be extremely successful men, both in sports and business. I had cut out going to clubs. I'm in the Word daily. I'm going to church, cleaning up my language. One day, an old Chicago buddy calls me and he says he wants to come visit me in Phoenix. I'm like, come on down, man. Like, come on down. I don't get to see too many of my old friends. So he flies out from Chicago to visit. First thing he says to me when he gets in my car, he goes, man, all right, what club we hitting up tonight? And when I tell him I'm no longer doing the party scene, he looks at me and says, dude, what happened to you? I want the old JR back. And in that moment, it hit me. For years, I was more focused on what other people wanted for me than what God wanted for me. I realized that God had to remove me from that environment and those people to prepare me for the path he had planned for me. But when I was going through that season, I was just constantly thinking that God was stripping me of everything. Stripping me of where I lived in my home in Chicago and my friends and my comfort zones. And honestly, at times I felt rejected. Like, what is going on? I keep losing things. Kind of like how I felt, rejection when my friends said that to me in the car. But later I learned I wasn't being rejected. I was being refined. And I learned this when I got a hold of the scripture verse, John 15:2. It says, which he is referring to God, he cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. So this verse reminded me that God just doesn't just take. He prunes too, even the good stuff. He prepares us. He positions us for something greater. That's if we let him. And speaking of scripture, we got to talk about Joseph. One of my favorite characters in the Bible, by the way. You read in Genesis that Joseph was stripped, literally, of his coat. He was stripped of his family and his freedom. Then on top of that, he was sold. He was falsely accused and he was imprisoned. But in all of that stripping, God was strengthening his leadership. He was building his character. And he was teaching Joseph how to trust in him. Now, if you're familiar with Joseph's story, what happens next is Joseph became second in command over Egypt and was used by God to save nations, not a town, not a city, nations. God subtracted from Joseph before he multiplied his success in life. So here's how I want to turn this into a 5-minute drill. First, I want to encourage you to experiment with this when you feel like God's taking away something from your life. And I want to, again, counterintuitive name here, but I want to call this the PRY Framework, PRY. Now, I chose the word pry because I want you to think, okay, God just closed the door shut on me. Or he shut the door on this relationship or this opportunity, whatever. Bottom line, he closed something shut. This is where the word pry came to mind. With this strategy, we're not prying the door open, though. We're not, getting that crowbar, prying that door that was closed. We're not prying the door open. We're prying the life lesson open. Because closed doors often hide open invitations. And open invitations to learn and grow. You following me here? You picking up what I'm putting down? So these letters in the word PRY obviously symbolize 3 steps. So PRY, spelled P-R-Y, 3 steps to this strategy. So step 1 is pause and process. It's take you 2 minutes. When the loss hits you, it's not a reaction. I'm saying don't react here. Instead of reacting, regulate, meaning regulate your emotions. Take a minute alone. Just take a minute alone. Then say out loud to yourself, I feel, insert the blank emotion you feel because this happened. This in the nerdy space that I belong in is called effect labeling. Then, so you've taken a minute aloud, you said this, you said out loud, okay, I'm feeling this because this happened. Now down-regulate your nervous system because it's in fight or flight mode whether you like it or not. Down-regulate that. Get it to rest and digest by breathing deeply. 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. If you can't do that, fine. 3 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Obviously, I want you to exhale longer than your inhale. That helps calm your nervous system down. So do that for a minute, okay? So let me just talk about the science behind the pieces of this first step. There's this concept, warning, I'm going to get nerdy again. There's this concept called the amygdala hijack. It was coined by psychologist Daniel Goleman, author of the book Emotional Intelligence. This is what happens when your emotional brain overrides your logical brain, especially in moments of stress and in moments of fear or just perceived threats. The amygdala is the part of your brain responsible for detecting threats and triggering these emotional responses like fear and anger and panic. When it perceives danger, whether real danger or not real danger, it can hijack your brain's normal decision-making process, which typically involves the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for those things like logic and reasoning and judgment. This all leads to reactive behavior. There's that fight or flight or freeze instead of thoughtful responses. So let's say a client suddenly pulls out of a deal that you were banking on. You feel blindsided. Your heart rate spikes. You instantly think, man, I'm screwed. By the way, I'm giving you this example because this is me. I'm screwed. Everything's falling apart. That's not your if that's what you're saying, that's not your logical brain thinking, or talking, I should say. That's your amygdala hijacking your system. This matters because when you're dealing with a loss, whether it's a contract, a job, relationship, your first reaction is often emotionally charged, right? But that emotional surge can cloud your ability to interpret what God might be doing. So pausing and practicing something like effect labeling, I feel blank because this happened, it helps calm the amygdala and re-engage with your rational brain. This is why step 1 in the PRY framework is pause and process. It literally helps you take your brain back from this hijack. And I want to bring up the scripture verse around here too. Psalm 46:10. It says, be still and know that I am God. In my opinion, stillness, it's a spiritual strength training, in my opinion. You can't be still with an upregulated nervous system. That's where the calming breath comes into play. By the way, Ryan Holiday, one of my favorite authors, a Stoic, wrote a book on stillness. It's called Stillness is the Key. I'm staring at it right here in my bookshelf. All right, let's move on to step 2. Step 2 is the R in PRY. R stands for reflect and reframe. Again, 2 minutes. So you do these 2 steps, we're up to 4 minutes. The last step will be a minute, hence 5-minute drill. So what you're going to do here is just answer 2 questions. First question is, what could God be preparing you through this situation, through this loss? What could God be preparing you for through this loss? Then the second question is, what might he be protecting you from? So preparing and protecting here. This, I hope you're picking up on this. This is simply getting curious instead of cynical. In the brain science world, we call this cognitive reappraisal. It's a psychological skill that increases resilience and life satisfaction. It helps you see the same event from a different, more empowering lens. Back to scripture around this. Really, this is the scripture surrounding Joseph's story that I mentioned earlier. It's Genesis 50:20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. And as one of my mentors would say to me, he said, you need to start seeing things from heaven's perspective, not hell's perspective. I absolutely love that reminder. I hear that reminder almost daily. Finally, we have step 3, which is the Y in PRY. Y stands for yield. Really, I like to call this the surrender step. It's about letting go of control and then leaning in. I've learned that God doesn't multiply what we cling to and what we hold on to with a death grip. He multiplies what we surrender. John 12:24 backs this up. Unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. In other words, yielding precedes the multiplying. So here's how you'll do this step. You just pray a simple prayer. Like, you know what, God, I yield and surrender my expectations to you. You know what? Multiply whatever's left. And then after you pray that very short, simple prayer, is committing to one next best step in obedience, even if it's small. Again, we got to keep this simple. I hope you're picking up. Like, this strategy is just simple. It's not going to take a lot of time, but it's going to keep you moving. It's going to keep you moving. We're surrendering outcomes in this step. And when we do that, we reduce anxiety and we actually increase our well-being. That's a huge win. This is why I'm encouraging you to ditch the all too common mindset people are running around with that, hey, you know what? Something's removed from my life. That means I must have messed up. God took this opportunity away from me. I must have messed up. Instead, adopt the mindset that if something's removed from your life, or if there's some kind of setback, God may be setting you up for your next breakthrough. Science backs up this mindset too, by the way. According to Dr. Kristen Neff's research on self-compassion and growth after adversity, her research shows that letting go of external validation, defining your success by what others think and what others say about you, and focusing on what's already inside of you and your inner strength, that has been proven to create resilience and higher performances over time. Bottom line, quit being so dang hard on yourself. You're not screwing up if things aren't exactly falling into place or if more opportunities or people are going away than coming to you. My best advice here, don't rush to fill the gap. Let God do his thing. I know it's hard. Because you're driven. You're driven like me. You want to make things happen when things aren't happening. Heck, that's the athlete DNA that you and I have. The right approach, though, if you do anything, do examine what God is trying to show you or teach you through this loss. Again, whether it's the loss of a friend or an opportunity, a relationship, a deal, whatever. So, just to recap this week's drill, whenever you feel a loss, which you could be experiencing this right now, stop where you are and apply the PRY principle. Pause and process the loss, reflect and reframe the loss, then yield to God. Again, I just shared how to do this in detail earlier. So you might have to hit rewind or listen to this again or watch this again. All right, but that's this week's 5-minute drill. I'll tell you, when I put this principle in my toolbox, it just shifted how I handle so-called setbacks. And I always say so-called setbacks because I don't believe in setbacks anymore. I just believe in setups. Instead of spiraling down into this negative cycle, I just started seeking God and his plan more in these moments, in these seasons. And instead of grieving what I lost, I started growing into the next season of my life. I want the same for you. Now, again, I'm big on getting momentum. And I'm big on visualization. So my encouragement to you, again, right after this episode, Take 30 to 60 seconds to visualize yourself actually executing this drill. Close your eyes, visualize yourself, experiencing something being taken away from you. But instead of panicking, you press pause to process what's going on and what you're feeling. Take a minute to breathe. Then you reflect on what God's doing and reframe it as something for your good. Then you see yourself yielding, surrendering to God's plan in this situation, and then taking the next step in faith, moving you forward to your desired future. Again, with these visualizations, see it, feel it, own it. Lock in before the day gets away from you. Again, visualization, I can't tell you how, it's had such an effect on my life, and it is one of the key strategies we use in my work with pro and executive athlete private clients. It just primes your nervous system, and it helps you to improve your follow-through with this drill. And like I mentioned before today's episode, if you're a guy who's looking to come up clutch more often for your family, for your team, then head on over to theclutchclub.com and check out what I have for you. Trust me, you won't regret it. Until then, don't forget, winning isn't a result, it's a lifestyle. So keep pursuing that life of champions.
This episode is over. Get more no BS content to help you master your mind, body, and relationships by hitting subscribe. This is Coming Up Clutch with JR. Thanks for listening.